Facepalm America. I'm Beowulf Rockland. FacepalmAmerica.com is where you can go to find more information about the show. Listen to past episodes and connect with us on social media. Merry Christmas to you. Now, I'm not recording this on Christmas Day. I am actually taking the day off, and I hope you're doing the same. I hope that is something you are able to do. I hope you're able to spend time with your family, with your friends, and just not work and soak in the goodness of, for once, not doing too much of anything. I think we need more of that. I don't know if we need so much of the buying things that comes along with Christmas, but, many people have said that before me. That's not what I'm going to linger on so much. I was really fascinated, as people sometimes get this time of year with a particular Christmas movie. And you have possibly seen it. It's a very popular movie, continues to be. And it's one that I think most people continue to consider to be a Christmas movie, Home Alone. If you thought I was going to say Die Hard, you are wrong. Although, if that is your tradition, God bless you. Home Alone. I saw it in the movie theater as a young person back in 1990. Enjoyed it then. And one of the things, I didn't notice it at the time, but something that I've thought about since, and I've thought about in a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows, is, boy, these people must have a lot of money. I think about that about Modern Family, too, when I watch that from time to time. They just live in gorgeous houses in a beautiful neighborhood that necessitates very large income. I can think of very few TV shows, movies, where the people depicted aren't comfortably well off, at least. Even in the few shows where someone is in the working class, Roseanne from the 80s, for example, they still had a big old house. Maybe it was still barely possible for members of the working class to have big old houses back then. It is pretty rare now. But obviously, Home Alone and its sequel, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, would lead one to believe that the McAllisters, Kevin's parents, were pretty darn well-to-do. They live in a big old house in the Chicago suburbs, Winnetka, Illinois, to be specific. A very large home. And if you think about it, it's pretty obvious that they're rich because the characters played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern have cased their house for a reason. They think there might be a lot of valuable things there. And so, it stands to reason. Now, why do we focus so much on the very wealthy in our media? Well, one, they're created by people who tend to be wealthier. Two, if commercials are involved, or even ticket prices, but especially on TV and other places where advertisers are involved, they're looking to sell to large advertisers, and they often want to get through to people who have a lot of money. I mean, they are trying to sell things. And so that ends up being the structure. And I think that's, in a way, unfortunate, because it focuses more time and attention on the lifestyles of the rich and famous than they deserve. Of course, obviously, people are obsessed with that. People tend to be. People want to be rich. Certainly in this country, they are obsessed with it. And I think that's, to a certain extent, aspirational, and certain extent it's out of desperation, because a lot of people are very poor or struggling, and they wish they didn't have to struggle so much. And so, anyway, I thought it was interesting that the New York Times had an article in the last couple of weeks, the title of which is, "Just How Rich Were the McAllisters in Home Alone?" And I think it is fascinating to finally have that question answered. And they do answer it. They consult experts, at any rate, who give them and us what I think is a pretty plausible estimate of just how much money they had. How much did they make? How much was that house worth? And so I want to delve into that with you. So one of the statements that this article makes, I think, is pretty obvious. The McAllisters are the 1%. Yes, they are. You can tell from their house. You can tell by the way that they dress. You can tell by the amenities that they have in their home that these are people of great income who would be in the very top echelon of American income. The home is the best clue to how much money the McAllisters have, according to this article. The silver tuna, or its exterior anyway, and that is how Marv and Harry, the thieves played by Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci, refer to the house as silver tuna, is a real-world house at 671 Lincoln Avenue in the Chicago suburb of Winnetka, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the United States. So when you see that, you know you're in a nice area. And that information, by the way, comes from Realtor.com. In 1990, the house was affordable only for the top 1% of Chicago household incomes. And that would still be the case today, according to economists at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. Those economists made this determination after looking at data including household incomes in the Chicago metropolitan statistical area for 1990 and 2022. The house's property value, the prevailing mortgage rates at the time, and typical taxes and insurance. Working with the assumption that the McAllisters did not spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and you always have to wonder at that, because as we know, both from necessity and overreach, people often spend more than 30% of their income on housing. But given that they're in that neighborhood, let's make that assumption. I think that's a good assumption to make because they probably are wealthy to one degree or another. Anyway, on that basis, the economists determined the home would have been affordable to a household with an income of $305,000 annually in 1990, and that would be about $665,000 in 2022. So, in 2022, $23, you would need an income of over $650,000 a year in order to afford the McAllister home. In the middle of 2022, a similar house would have cost $2.4 million based on the Zillow estimate for the Home Alone house. A home of that value would be affordable to a household with an income of $730,000, which would be in the top 1% of Chicago area households. So really, what you need is at least an annual income of $750,000. in order to be the McAllisters in current dollars. So, and there are issues that go beyond that. There are issues of privilege, because in the film, Kevin, he goes around and he buys groceries. I know there is a persistent internet meme that talks about how he bought all sorts of groceries for $19 and some cents. I forget exactly how much. And how that's an indicator of inflation. It certainly is an indicator of inflation. But he was going around. He was buying things. He was looking in stores. And he was a white child of privilege. And no one really bothered to investigate anything that might be going wrong with it. So I think that's an interesting observation. And believe you me, these things, they don't interfere with my enjoyment of the film. These things, which I think they're important to observe, but you can still it's just a fun, goofy movie too. I mean, that's okay. It is possible to hold two different ideas in your head at once. You can say, hey, this is a fun, goofy movie, and we love seeing the thieves essentially get tortured by a small child. That is pleasurable to us culturally. And you can also analyze it and say, hey, why are we just focusing on rich people and white people and people of privilege? Why is that? Maybe we should do other things. You see, you can do both. You don't have to feel guilty for watching it. That's okay. And you can also turn a critical eye to it. You know, we're complicated. We can enjoy things and also be critical of them. You know, like America. We can like America and also realize, wow, we've always been far from a perfect nation, and we need to get a hell of a lot better. The same is true, ladies and gentlemen, of Home Alone. All right, now that that's settled. So, another question, and the story, the New York Times story raises this question, is where'd they get their money from? That's never addressed in the movie. They don't say what they do. If you look at the mom, she's got power suits from the late 80s, early 90s era that she's wearing. And so she's a professional woman of some kind. The story mentions that there are mannequins in the house, so it makes a guess that, or alludes to the fact that some people have guessed that she is a high-powered person in the fashion industry. That is a possibility. And a couple of people online, both in this story and folks who have posted to my own page, have mentioned the idea, the theory, that Mr. McAllister could be involved in organized crime. Now that's interesting. There's one person who, a friend of mine, who posted on Facebook when I posted this story, had the biggest house in one of the 5 most expensive real estate markets in America. The only explanation is that he was the head of the Chicago Mafia. Now that he is not the only one who believes that. That is a pervasive theory, that he was involved in organized crime. And again, one fan theory posits, says the story, that Peter McAllister is involved in organized crime. Under this theory, the McAllister home was specifically targeted as some sort of vendetta, and Kevin's brutal violence against the burglars is the product of an upbringing exposed to criminal activity.